We found her clutching a stuffed wolf, Commander, charred but intact. The toy, not the girl. The voice was clinical, filtered through the distorted playback of a black box recovery drone. It crackled once, then ended in silence. Commander Arlen Voss stared at the screen. His hand hovered above the console, frozen. He could still see the image, the remains of a child curled beneath scorched beams, barely recognizable, the stuffed animal pressed to her chest. The fur was singed, but the plastic eyes gleamed as if untouched by flame. He didn't blink. The room around him was quiet, sealed, lit only by the soft blue glow of the holoscreen. He'd locked the doors 2 hours ago. The bridge crew knew not to disturb him. Outside, the TNS Vengeance drifted in the black above the scorched world of Zarvon 3, once a quiet frontier colony, now reduced to rubble, ash, and names on a casualty list. 91 children. One of them was Lena Mira Voss, his niece. She was 6. The message she sent him, recorded 3 days before the attack, still sat in his inbox. Uncle Arlen, I drew the ocean. It's so blue. Did you know you can float forever if you breathe just right? She giggled. That soft, innocent laugh, the kind only children had, the kind the universe never deserved, echoed in the dead silence. He didn't watch it again. Arlen stood and crossed the room to a narrow drawer near his bunk. He opened it slowly, reverently. Inside was a small wooden box. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside was a medal from the Black Cry campaign, a bloodstained recon patch, and a hollow of his brother, smiling, cradling a newborn Lena. Arlen had made a promise at that funeral, years ago. Protect the girl. That was it. That was the whole point of surviving. And now the Galactic Council had decided Zarvon 3 was a biothreat vector. No warning, no evac, no transmission blackout. Just a council-approved orbital sweep sanctioned by the Virexi Dominion. The cleanup team found the orbital cannon signatures hours after the fires cooled. The official report called it a tragic but necessary containment. Necessary. He clenched the edge of the drawer until the frame bent under his grip. There was a chime at his door. He didn't respond. A second chime. Then a voice, filtered but familiar. Arlen, it's Rhea. We just received council orders. They want you to report to a diplomatic hearing on Vera Prime. High Executive Ralzoon will preside. Arlen walked back to the desk, tapped a single command. Deny. Rhea's voice came again, firmer. You can't just ignore. He opened the channel. I'm not going to sit in a room and let them dress the murderer in medals. Prep the warboard. Wake Holton Day. Get the black protocols online. A pause. You're serious. I've never been more. He ended the transmission. No room for discussion. He walked to the center of the cabin, keyed in his override code. A section of the floor slid open, revealing a deep lock case. Inside, a small hand-engraved data core, shaped like a black obelisk, illegal in most sectors, lethal in all, black protocols. Earth's contingency playbook for when diplomacy failed, and vengeance was all that remained. He inserted it into the wall port. A voice chimed, flat and ancient. Confirm activation. Unauthorized strike doctrine tier Omega. This action cannot be undone. He stared at the screen, then whispered, confirm. Across the ship, deep in the tactical deck, red lights flickered to life. Warning klaxons did not sound. The Vengeance was running silent now. Communications would be encrypted. Engines would be cold-jumped on staggered pulse. Weapon systems would self-calibrate for stealth precision, not area bombardment. This wasn't war. This was surgical vengeance. On the bridge, Captain Rhea Core stood frozen at her station. She was the first to join Arlen's crew after the CERN collapse, the only cyber warfare expert who survived both the neural blackout and the Jovian firewall sabotage. She followed him through mutinies in mines and hollow treaties. But this felt different. She looked at the main screen, where the orbital image of Zarvon. 3 remained locked, burnt craters where houses once stood, black smudges where the schools had been. She didn't question it further. She keyed the fleet channel. All crew to stations. Fleet Mobility Protocol 9. Silent Op. We are now under Black Doctrine authority. Around her, junior officers exchanged glances, tense, sharp, bracing themselves for what was to come. Hours later, the tactical board was filled with red marks. Council outposts, Virexi data vaults, Dominion patrol routes. There were names beside each one. Arlen pointed to the first. This outpost provided targeting telemetry for the strike. No survivors. He moved to the second. This freighter transmitted decoy signals to hide the strike in the jump lanes. We make an example of it. Demas Holt, hulking and scarred from 4 frontline campaigns, simply nodded. He didn't ask why. He'd buried too many kids already. Sarai Day, once a Council Fleet commander, studied Arlen's face. This will start something that can't be stopped. Arlen turned to her, voice steady. It already started. We're just replying. That night, when the war board dimmed and the crew settled into rotation, Arlen sat alone in the observation chamber. He played Lena's message one last time. I drew the ocean, Uncle Arlen. I want to show you someday. His voice barely carried above the whisper of the ship's power systems. You will. He stared out the viewport as the stars drifted past. They will remember you. I'll make sure of it. The war board glowed like a constellation of violence. Each red marker represented a Council-linked asset involved in the Zarvon 3 strike, intel nodes, relay buoys, logistic ships. One by one, Arlen Voss's finger hovered above them as if issuing silent death sentences. Across from him stood Captain Rhea Kaur, arms crossed, face unreadable. Her pale blue cybernetic implants blinked in sync with the data streams cascading down the holodeble. You sure about this one? She asked, pointing at a relay station on the edge of Virexi territory. It's just a comms hub. Arlen didn't look up. That relay masked the orbital sweep. Scrambled our early warning satellites. They hid what they were doing before they lit the sky. Rhea tapped the edge of the table, then slowly nodded. Understood. The door hissed open behind them. Colonel Demas Holt stepped in, his footsteps heavy with armor plating. He carried a data chip and dropped it on the table. We just intercepted this from a trade ship out of Rollins sector. Council chatter confirms it. Zarvon 3 was a mistake. Arlen picked up the chip. His jaw tightened as he scanned the translation. They called it a tolerance test. Rhea's voice was cold. They wanted to see how far they could push us. They're about to find out, Holt muttered. Arlen slid the chip into the command node. A tactical map flared to life. 5 red label Virexi installations pulsed, ready for targeting. We hit these 3 first. Fast. Quiet. In and out before they can mount response. He turned to Holt. Load stealth torpedoes. No warning shots. Full vaporization. No comms traces. Holt nodded once, then left the room without a word. Rhea lingered. Her voice dropped, softer now. You sure your head's still clear? Arlen didn't answer immediately. He watched the rotating map, saw the stars swirl, and imagined what Lena's drawing might have looked like. They killed children, Rhea. There's no diplomacy after that. Just consequences. She sighed. Then let's make damn sure we're aiming at the right necks. 3 hours later, the TNS Vengeance and its escort ships, Cruxblade, Spectre, and Eidolon, slipped out of jump space just beyond the Virgon dust belt. They coasted on minimal energy, hulls cold, running dark. On the bridge, Arlen stood in front of the viewports, watching a Council communications relay drift lazily in orbit over a gas giant. A delicate ring of satellites formed its protective perimeter, beautiful, efficient, and completely vulnerable. Hope, Arlen said. Weapons locked. Fire. 3 bursts of pale blue plasma lanced out silently, crossing the void in seconds. The relay and its satellites detonated in perfect sync. There were no escape pods, no alarms. Just silence, and then nothing. Back in Council space, High Executive Ralzoon stood in a vaulted chamber carved from translucent obsidian. He faced a half-circle of galactic delegates, silent, armored, their expressions masked. As predicted, Ralzoon said calmly, the humans respond with chaos. A delegate stirred. You provoked them. I measured them. Their grief always leads to fury. Let them lash out. It will justify preemptive cleansing. Humanity is too volatile for council trust. A soft murmur passed through the chamber. Ralzoon lifted a data scroll. The Terrans act on instinct. But instinct is predictable. The council must act before their contagion spreads further. He smiled, a gesture that meant nothing kind on his species' face. By allowing them to strike, we give ourselves license to end them. On board the Vengeance, tension hung heavy after the second strike. They'd hit a Virexi supply ship next, loaded with encrypted cargo. One shot split it into 6 molten fragments. No warning. No survivors. Arlen sat alone in the war room, replaying footage of the first blast. He didn't feel satisfaction. He felt stillness, like the eye of a storm waiting to close. Rhea entered without asking. The council started mobilizing. Defense fleets at 3 jump gates. Let them. Arlen, her voice had weight now. You're leading Earth into open war. He looked at her. They did that when they burned a school from orbit. Earth didn't approve this mission. Earth's approval is irrelevant. They'll thank me when the council backs off. Rhea leaned forward. And if they don't, if you make Earth a pariah, you willing to let our people pay for this? If I don't act, he said quietly, then our children will pay for it. Again, I won't let that happen. She stared at him a long moment. This isn't vengeance anymore. It's deterrence. He nodded. That's the idea. Later that day, the Vengeance jumped to the edge of the Terror Drift, where an abandoned Virexi science station had quietly gone dark 2 months earlier. Surveillance drones had traced encrypted signals from its remains to the strike plans for Zarvon 3. It was time to erase the trail. The team loaded a strike shuttle. Holt handled demolition. Rhea hacked their surveillance grid mid-descent. The ship touched down in the dead silence of a hololab orbiting a dying star. No resistance. Just dust, shattered screens, and frozen corpses still at their stations. They didn't evacuate, Holt noted grimly. Or they weren't allowed to. They found the transmission logs buried deep behind triple firewalls. Rhea decrypted them on-site. The logs confirmed everything. Ralzoon had approved the Zarvon sweep. No biological threat. No emergency. Just a test. To see if the humans would tolerate child casualties without retaliation. She looked up at Arlen. They signed the death warrant themselves. Arlen said nothing. He left the logs intact, but programmed the core to overload. They walked out just before the station collapsed in on itself. No fire, just silence and falling dust. Back on the Vengeance, Rhea found him standing in front of a wall-mounted star map of Earth. She stepped up beside him. You really think this will stop them? Arlen's eyes didn't leave the blue sphere, framed in starfire and distance. No, but it will remind them. Of what? He glanced at her. That the first rule wasn't suggestion. The war room lights dimmed as the intercepted footage began to play. A Virexi War Council chamber appeared. Angular, metallic, humming with low-frequency harmonics. In the center stood High Executive Ralzoon, spine rigid, arms folded behind his back, speaking before 6 towering delegates, their faces obscured in shadow. Let them grieve, he said. Humans are ruled by it. It softens them, blinds them, but they cannot grieve and fight. One always consumes the other. The footage paused. Silence filled the command deck of the TNS Vengeance. Commander Arlen Voss sat still, hands steepled under his chin. The glow of the projection cast deep hollows beneath his eyes. He's wrong, Rhea said quietly from behind him. Arlen's voice was low. No, he's right, except for one thing. He leaned forward. We grieve after. The briefing ended. The crew dispersed in silence, the message cutting deeper than any order could. War wasn't strategy anymore. It was personal. And now the enemy had a name, a voice. Arlen remained behind, sifting through fragments of Virexi transmissions they decrypted over the past week. Buried among operations data and surveillance reports, he found the proof. Zarvon 3 hadn't just been sacrificed, it had been chosen. Ralzoon had labeled it low value, high leverage. He didn't blink as he read the words. He didn't curse. He simply archived the file, then shut it off. Hours later, in the crew mess hall, now repurposed into a planning space. Rhea spread projection across the long metal table. Colonel Holt studied it from the other end, fingers tapping on a canister of synth caffeine. Face unreadable. We've identified 5 more targets directly tied to Ralzoon's command chain, Rhea said. Logistics, encryption, relay, and 1 strategic outpost, Vasker 9. That one's active, Holt noted. Fleet presence confirmed. Defense grid will be tight. Good, Arlen said, walking in. Let them know we're coming. They turned to him. Vasker 9. Rhea asked, You want to hit it head-on? We do it fast. No comms leak. We take the command center intact. What for? Holt asked. Arlen stared at the projection. Because I want Ralzoon to see us walk through the fire. I want him to see what it looks like when grief sharpens, not softens. The strike was set for 0400 standard ship time. The fleet dropped into the Vasker system behind the shadow of its dead moon, using gravitational eddies to mask their approach. No comms. No beacons. Just silence. The crew aboard the Spectre inserted a strike team through the planet's dark pole. They cut through 3 floors of defense architecture before disabling the relay tower. Arlen led the breach himself. His rifle barked twice. Virexi guards dropped before alarms even sounded. He kicked open the main command room and fired a stun shot into the ceiling. Everyone down. They complied. Cowards or realists, it didn't matter. He stepped forward, past flickering consoles and alien glyphs glowing along the walls. Where's your data core? He asked in flawless Virexi. The officer closest to him didn't answer. Don't make me ask twice. She gestured to a recessed chamber near the rear. Arlen nodded to Holt, who pried it open with a magnetic pulse. Inside, transmission records, command logs, and surveillance packages tied directly to the Zarvon 3 operation. Ralzoon's approval signature stamped across each one. Rhea's voice came through on the type band. We've got it. Full proof. Pull the data. Then we torch the rest. Back aboard the Vengeance, Arlen stood alone in his quarters. The door chimed. It's open, he called. Rhea stepped inside, holding a datapad. She didn't speak immediately. He waited. This, she said at last, handing it over, is the log file from Zarvon 3's local network. We recovered fragments. One of them is personal. He took the pad. It was a short clip, fuzzy, poorly lit, but he'd know that voice anywhere. Uncle Arlen, I made a C. It's blue. It's really blue. Lena's face smiled wide on the screen, her curly hair sticking out at wild angles, paint on her fingers. She held up a rough digital painting, a child's rendering of Earth's oceans, with little floating islands and a whale that looked more like a balloon with fins. I'll show you next time you come. Arlen closed his eyes. Rhea didn't speak. She waited. He opened them again and handed the pad back. Keep that. Make a copy. For the record. You want to broadcast? He shook his head. Not yet. Why not? Because if I send it now, he said, they'll think we're begging for sympathy. And later, he looked at her. Later, they'll know we didn't need it. In the council chamber on Virat Prime, Ralzoon received the news with silent calculation. Vasker 9 is gone? Yes, executor, his aide said, voice uneasy. They spared no one in the outer wings. But they captured your transmission files intact. Ralzoon didn't respond. Sir, let them see, he said. Let them rage. He stood and looked out the crystalline viewport over the planet's capital, its towers gleaming under distant suns. Their god is grief, he murmured, and grief devours its worshippers. Back in the darkness of space, Arlen watched the stars beyond the viewport. They looked calm, cold, beautiful, but all he saw were the faces of those who wouldn't see them again. Lena, the other children, names without graves. Send a message, he told Rhea. To who? Everyone. What do you want to say? He stared out into the stars and whispered, that we remember. The TNS Vengeance emerged from a jump corridor in the shadow of Echelon Verge, the Virexi Dominion's fortified capital moon. A city wrapped in storm clouds and orbital guns, its surface bristling with defense towers like a metallic forest. From the bridge, the planet loomed enormous across the viewport. A continent-wide shield dome shimmered faintly in low orbit. Beneath it, layers of habitation blocks, industrial hives, and administrative monoliths where warlords like Ralzun made decisions that destroyed worlds. Commander Arlen Voss stood at the forward console, arms folded, eyes locked in a heart of enemy power. "We're in range," Rhea said, her fingers gliding across the holomap. "Defense grid is hot. No opening." "Expected," Arlen replied. "We're not here for stealth." Colonel Holt stepped up behind them, armor already locked in place. "You want orbital saturation? Say the word. I'll paint the towers myself." Arlen didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled up the data Rhea had transmitted from Vasker 9, the proof of council authorization, the time-stamped orders, the children's death tolls. He projected it all onto the command display. Then he added one more file. Lena's message. Her little voice filled the room again. "I made a C. It's blue." The bridge crew froze. No one looked away. When the message ended, Arlen spoke, calm and measured. "We drop now. Ground incursion. No civilian zones touched. We breach Ralzun's war vault. We take him alive if we can. Dead if we must." Holt's brow furrowed. "No orbital strike? Commander, they wouldn't show us the same mercy." "That's why we win," Arlen said flatly. "We don't murder children." The drop pods deployed in waves, streaking down through atmosphere like falling stars. Arlen rode in the lead pod, flanked by Rhea, Holt, and a team of elite assault troopers. Each wore reinforced combat rigs, Neuralink HUDs, and sealed exoframes built for siege warfare. Their target, Council Spire 7, a deep-core war archive beneath the primary tower. Intelligence confirmed Ralzun was there, shielded, guarded, hiding behind blast doors and bureaucrats. The pod bucked as they hit atmospheric interference. Red light flooded the interior. 70 seconds, Rhea announced, eyes locked forward. Arlen checked his weapon. Charged. Calibrated. Steady. "Whatever happens down there," he said, voice low, "we do not become them." "Copy that," Holt replied. "But if he begs—" "You shoot last," Arlen cut in. "He sees us first." The pod slammed into a landing corridor with bone-jarring force. The hatch blew open into smoke and plasma fire. The assault began. The halls of Echelon Verge were unlike any battlefield Arlen had seen. Civilians ran screaming through side corridors as alarms blared overhead. Automated turrets dropped from the ceiling. Drones swarmed from docking hatches. The team cut through resistance, one level at a time. Precision. Discipline. No civilian casualties. Still, the weight pressed in. Every hallway brought new reminders. Evac shelters filled with trembling alien children, parents shielding them with outstretched arms. Rhea disabled a targeting turret before it rotated toward a crying boy. Holt cursed under his breath. "They're using them like walls." Arlen kicked in the next bulkhead. "Then we go through walls." By the time they reached Spire 7's core level, the path behind them was littered with wreckage. But no innocent blood. Inside the vault, Ralzun waited. He stood calmly as the blast door peeled open under Rhea's override. The room was sparse. No guards. Just one long table, a holographic map hovering above it. "So," Ralzun said softly, "this is how it ends." Arlen stepped in, rifle raised but finger off the trigger. "No speeches. No games." Ralzun's eyes gleamed. "Strange. You came all this way to act civilized." "You murdered children," Rhea said from behind Arlen. "We're not here to talk." Ralzun spread his arms. "Then shoot. But know this, it won't stop what's coming. You've sparked a fire that won't end with me." Arlen stepped closer. "This isn't about ending a war. This is about telling the galaxy what the first rule means." Ralzun smiled bitterly. "You think your grief makes you righteous, but it only makes you predictable." He turned his back on them. "Your species mistakes love for strength, but love is a flaw. You burn too easily." Rhea looked to Arlen, waiting. You want him alive? She asked. Arlen paused. His expression never changed. No. Rhea shot him once, cleanly, between the shoulder blades. Ralzoon crumpled without a word. They extracted the body in data core. The Vengeance re-entered orbit, engines hot, calm silent. Arlen watched the moon shrink behind them. Echelon Verge was wounded but intact. They destroyed the war nerve, not the city. They hadn't burned homes. They hadn't silenced children. Back in the war room, the crew gathered as Rhea brought up the broadcast file. Proofs verified, she said. Every name, every order. The entire Zarvon 3 operation, all tied to him, ready for feed. Arlen nodded. Do it. The message spread across the galaxy in less than an hour. Human and alien networks alike aired it without comment. Council members resigned. Protests ignited across neutral systems. Treaties were suspended. Borders shifted. In every transmission, one line stood above the rest. The first rule is not suggestion. That night, Arlen sat in the observation chamber again. Lena's final message was cued on loop, but muted now. He didn't need the sound, just the image of her eyes, the way she grinned, the pain on her hands. Rhea entered quietly. She carried a data pad, but didn't hand it over. You did what you came to do. No, Arlen said. I did what had to be done. Same thing, isn't it? He didn't answer. She sat beside him, silent for a long time. The galaxy's changed now, she said at last. Good, Arlen murmured. It needed to. He closed his eyes. They'll remember. The council burned from inside. Within 72 hours of the data leak, 3 major species withdrew from the Central Galactic Concord. 11 high-ranking officials were arrested. Protests raged across 4 sectors. Human warships were denied docking at neutral ports, but not because they weren't welcome, because those worlds feared what might follow them. The message was clear. No one touches human children. Not anymore. Commander Arlen Voss stood before the War Tribunal, not as a defendant, but as a witness. The chamber was buried deep beneath Geneva's citadel, carved into mountain, shielded from orbit, and lined with reinforced transparent steel. The alien delegates were quiet as the video played. Footage of Zarvon 3's final moments. Scans of the incinerated school domes. The toy wolf pulled from Lena Voss's arms. A Cernathi representative, a silvery-skinned being with 6 narrow eyes, leaned forward. Commander Voss, your operation on Echelon Verge defied direct council jurisdiction. You executed a sitting warlord without trial. Do you deny these charges? Arlen didn't blink. I confirm them. Gasps rippled. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as protocols logged the confession. You also transmitted sensitive data across unsecured networks. That's correct. The Cernathi narrowed its eyes. Do you regret your actions? No, Arlen said flatly. And if your species had buried 91 children beneath molten glass, you wouldn't ask that question. Silence. From the shadows, a single human stood. President Alarakes, leader of the Terran Federation, addressed the tribunal at last. We do not apologize for truth, she said. We do not grieve quietly when our young are hunted, and we do not ask permission to protect our own. Then what do you ask for? A Tkaith ambassador hissed. Nothing, Kess replied. We warn, far from the tribunal. In orbit above Mars, the TNS Vengeance was docked for repairs, but her crew hadn't left. In the ship's lower deck, the officers gathered quietly. No orders, no protocol. Colonel Holt stood with his arms crossed, eyes distant. So what now? He asked. We took down Ralzoon. We broke the council's teeth. At the end of it, Rhea shook her head. It never ends. But we made something clear. She tapped a small hologram onto the center table. It displayed a symbol, half globe, half shield, etched with a single phrase. The first rule is sacred. Beneath it, in smaller text, Children of Terra Initiative Defense Division. Holt raised an eyebrow. Initiative? They're starting a task force, Rhea explained. Multi-species, volunteer only. Human-led, not for retaliation, for prevention. Any species, any world. If a child's threatened, we intervene. Arlen entered just as she finished. Not everyone in the galaxy is guilty, he said, but they all know what silence costs now. He looked at each of them. We didn't do this to break the galaxy. We did it to wake it. Months passed. The council fractured, then reformed under a provisional structure, one that no longer allowed absolute immunity to warlords. A new code was ratified, the Lena Charter, named by alien delegates in a moment of rare unity. Its first line, "No child of any world shall suffer unprovoked harm without immediate and just consequence." Humanity didn't ask for reparations. They didn't demand tribute. They built schools, hospitals, outposts in regions long ignored by the Council. Their soldiers protected alien children with the same fervor they did their own. Some races didn't understand it. Some feared it, but none doubted it. Because in every broadcast, in every terminal and outpost and command station across the stars, the phrase returned. Don't hurt the children, especially not the human ones. Arlen Voss retired, not from the Federation, but from war. He lived quietly on the Earthside coast of Luna's Mare Imbrium colony, teaching strategic ethics to cadets who'd never fired a weapon in anger. Sometimes, he would walk along the artificial shoreline at night. Rhea visited often, sometimes Holt, sometimes just silence. He never remarried, never spoke publicly again. But every year, on the anniversary of Zarvon 3's fall, he placed the same small object at the Academy Memorial. A scorched toy wolf, still intact. No plaque, no message. Everyone knew what it meant. One final broadcast rippled across the stars 5 years later. It featured no faces, no threats. Just a quiet scene. Human officers escorting refugee children off a burning space station. Among them, a terrified Cernathi girl with wide silver eyes. She held the hand of a Terra Marine, grimy, armored, and grinning. In her other hand, a stuffed wolf. Someone had given it to her. At the bottom of the video, one line of text scrolled. They remembered